With Cape Media News Conversations, I'm Sarah Colvin. The National Flood Insurance Program is set to expire on September 30th of this year, with thousands of claims expected to be filed in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. Here with me to talk about the impact of that and the importance and challenges of flood insurance, I welcome the CEO of the Cape Cod and Islands Association of Realtors, Ryan Castle. Ryan,
Thanks,
welcome.
Sarah, for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in. So let's talk a little bit about flood insurance, right? It's
All
one of
right.
those things that we should have, but we never want to use. Let's first start on the national level. What is the National Flood Insurance Program?
So the National Flood Insurance Program was created when when lenders wouldn't write loans without flood insurance, and there wasn't available private options, and this was back in the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s. And so they created the National Flood Insurance Program as an insurance program to write in areas where there's higher risk, where the federal government has said that designated V or A zones, people might hear, for flood insurance risk. And so it's a extra insurance program that's on top, separate from your homeowner's policy. So you have your homeowner's insurance, and then you can purchase flood insurance separately. You can buy it for any property, but in certain areas, your lender is going to require you to buy it.
Right, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency kind of is in charge of making the flood maps for the country, and those were, from what I understand, redone about 5 years ago, and they're continuously kind of looked at and redone.
Yeah, they're looked at every 10 years or so, and they're trying to get more scientific with their mapping as new technology comes available, obviously with innovation. Trying to get better at determining where those flood zones are, where those risks for floods become.
Sure, and of course we're looking at expiration for the National Flood Insurance Program, of course a program that's already compromised, not just by incoming claims from Hurricane Harvey, but from claims 12 years ago from Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy. So can you talk to me a little bit about the compromise of that system and the concern that will happen if this is not reauthorized?
Yeah, so the National Flood Insurance Program comes up for reauthorization every 5 years. They never do anything in perpetuity in Congress. And so 5 years ago, you might have remembered there was a lot of rate hikes, a lot of changes to the program, especially affecting Cape Cod, especially in the Falmouth and the Dennisport area on Cape Cod, where a lot of people were getting higher rates. That came from that reauthorization. And so it's up for reauthorization now, and it's continuing to try to figure out how to make the program more sustainable. It's always been a sustainable program, except for when Katrina and then Sandy made it more in debt. And so they pretty much borrowed money from the federal government to pay out the claims at this point. And now every year, when there's not big claim storms, they pay down some of the debt. And so it's getting there, but the problem becomes those claims happen.
Sure, and of course this isn't an insurance that's automatic. It is something that you as a homeowner do have to apply for, and what I understand, there's only 12% of the homeowners in Houston that have this.
12 to 20% depending on the estimate, because a couple things is most of the people that buy it are when the lender mandates you to buy it. But we would, there is preferred risk policies and other things that you talk to your insurance agent about that you can get even if you're not in a flood zone. That may be helpful. And then also those that do not have mortgages typically may not have flood insurance. And then the issue of the enforcement throughout the life of the loan, of making sure you keep your flood insurance policy with your lender. The enforcement's not great either. So they're estimating 12 to 20% of the Harvey victims may have had flood insurance, which is the difference between a flood insurance claim will give you $250,000 worth of coverage. And remember, we're talking about on the building, not the lot, not the land in the lot, because the flood doesn't really affect the land.
Sure.
So it's up to $250,000 worth of coverage. And disaster relief, that the federal government may pass a bill on disaster relief for Harvey will give you a couple thousand versus the $250,000 worth of coverage you get in flood insurance.
Right, but still, it definitely is a challenge. Water is one of the biggest things that can cause a severe damage to your home. Well, let's bring it back to Cape Cod. I mean, thinking about our homeowners on Cape Cod, and certainly there's a number of levels of floodplains here on the Cape. And as you were driving here, there's a lot of rain going on. We're in a flood watch right now. So what should Cape Codders keep in mind? And could this the expiration of the flood insurance program, if it's not reauthorized, could that have an impact on homeowners here on the Cape?
The expiration of the flood insurance program will definitely have an impact, especially on home buyers. So what happens when it expires? The program 5 years ago, when they were reauthorizing it, lapsed at certain times. And so nationwide, every day the program lapses, you have about 40,000 home loans that cannot close. So people that have put in contracts on homes that are getting ready to close the property, and if there's not available flood insurance to write for that property, then those loans won't close. And that's the worst part that could happen when you get to a lapse. Obviously, too, with the reauthorization efforts, making sure that a lot of the Cape Cod homeowners who have what we call grandfathering are protected is a big key too, because what grandfathering is people that built in compliance with the flood zones when the house was built, over time may have been moved into a different flood zone even though the house hasn't changed at all. But their flood insurance price would be a lot higher because of what's called where they're related to base flood elevation. But hopefully, and that's what we're trying to protect in the reauthorization of the National Flood Insurance Program, is that those homeowners that did nothing, that built in compliance, have kept that property up, everything else, are not penalized under reform efforts.
Sure, and of course the National Flood Insurance is a federal program. Is this something that local insurers or private insurers can offer to homeowners?
There are private insurance options. There becomes regulations as far as some of the subsidies and grandfathering that you may have when you leave the when you leave the NFIP market and go to the private market. You lose some of them if you ever need to come back in. So that's part of the reform effort, to look at trying to get the private insurance more into play and protect those homeowners. And locally, Barnstable County is doing a great job of in the community rating system. What the community rating system is, it's local policies that town by towns can take that give you discounts on flood insurance. And Barnstable County is doing a great job, and they just had 2 more towns enter the flood insurance program at 10 to 20% discounts. And they do a great job of trying to get those towns to get those discounts.
Sure. So what needs to happen to ensure that the National Flood Insurance Program is reinstated and continues to operate?
Congress
is there a risk
needs
of
to
that
take
not
action
happening?
by September 30th. So there is a bill in the House that is a bill that protects a lot of the stuff I've talked about, that moves forward, that has the support of the House leadership at this time. But getting to a vote in the House and then getting the Senate to vote on it, with a lot of other priorities, especially now disaster relief bill and other priorities, tax reform, immigration, other things happening, getting their attention and moving it forward. So I would just encourage everyone to let Congressman Keating know, and Senator Markey and Senator Warren, that getting this program reauthorized for homeowners is important.
Sure, and of course, as we look at the weather, and again, continue to track the damage that's happening in Texas, we watch Hurricane Irma, we watch a couple of other tropical storms that are forming. Is it something that people should think about taking a look at their flood insurance policies now and perhaps adding more, or is that more of a lengthy process for people?
I think you should always talk to your insurance agent about whether you should have flood insurance or not. There are some, and I'm not an insurance agent, but there are some types of waiting periods if you're not buying a house at the time to get that flood insurance. So you should be talking to them on a regular basis every year, saying, is flood insurance something I should be adding?
Great. And Ryan,
and some of them are really low-cost policies if you're not in if you're not in high-risk flood zones.
Absolutely, and those maps are readily available, and obviously your insurance agent will be able to have access to those to let you know where you are in terms of where the floodplain falls.
Absolutely.
Great. Is there any place people can look at, perhaps on the Cape and Islands Association of Realtors site, where people can get more information about flood zone insurance?
Yeah, you can always go to ccir.com, and we have a whole host of stuff up now. We actually have a call to action that's available to the public to take as well, where they can send an email to their congressman asking them to move flood insurance as a priority.
Great, wonderful. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Castle is the CEO of the Cape Cod and Islands Association of Realtors. You can find them online at cciaor.com. For Cape Media News, I'm Sarah Colvin.